This is your AP Macro video, which is a review of market supply and demand and macro measurements. So remember, when you're doing market supply and demand, you want to title your graph, and your title is going to be whatever market of the product that you're looking at. And this could be a market for one product like apples, or it could be a market for a generalized group of products like fruit. You could also go for a really big general market like food, but the bigger the market title is, the harder it is to find substitutes for it. When you're graphing, remember the vertical axis is your price and the horizontal axis is your quantity. So the quantity here is the quantity that's both bought and sold, and the vertical axis, that is price, is the retail price of the product, not the cost. We assume that the cost and profits are included in the price of the product. The demand line is downward sloping, so D for demand, D for downward sloping. Supply points to the sky. It is an upward sloping supply line. The demand line represents all of the possible people who are buyers in this market. And this line is made up of a whole bunch of points at which those buyers are willing and able to purchase this particular product for varying prices. And the supply line represents all of the sellers of this particular product and what they're willing to sell at. So clearly a seller wants to sell you a high-priced product, and they want to sell as many quantities as possible to you. But a buyer doesn't want to do that. A buyer wants a high-quality product at a low price. So as the price goes up for buyers, they tend to reduce the amount of units that they buy. So that is why the two lines are moving in the opposite directions. Now, the only place where the buyers and the suppliers agree is where the equilibrium is. And that will become what is referred to as the market equilibrium. So here we've got the price and quantity. You'll notice that these are all sub ones. So supply sub one, demand, price, and quantity. So this particular market is in equilibrium. Let's say that we're going to increase demand. Remember, an increase is any time a line shifts to the right. So if we shift demand to the right along the horizontal axis, then the demand line is going to shift out. The new equilibrium at price 2 and quantity 2, it means that the price is going up and the quantity that's both bought and sold goes up. So we shifted the entire demand line. This means all of the customers at all of their various prices are increasing the amount of units that they're interested in buying. But you'll notice when we shift the demand line to the right, the quantity that's supplied also moves with it. So we move to a new dot along the supply line, which is referred to as quantity supplied. And that is how we get the quantity both bought and sold is now at quantity 2. So we could have shifted this line to the left. That would have been a decrease in demand. When you decrease the entire demand line, you get a lower price and a lower quantity. It looks a little different when we're shifting the supply line, but remember, an increase in supply is when the supply line shifts to the right along the horizontal axis. So just like we did for demand, you want to figure out if it is one of your shifters of supply or demand, and then make the change to your line. So here we've shifted supply 2, it's now to the right. Our new equilibrium is at a new price 2 and quantity 2. When we increase the amount of supply, this means we shifted the entire supply line. So all of the suppliers increase the amount of goods that they're willing and able to sell to customers. But again, when we shift the entire supply line, the dot along the demand line shifted with it. So we're at a new quantity demanded. And that is how quantity 2 is both the quantity that's bought and sold. So when the supply goes up, the price of the product lowers, but we have more units that are bought and sold. If supply were to decrease and shift to the left, then we would get a higher price and a lower quantity. We also in the fall talked about macro measurements. These are ways that we measure the economy. Gross domestic product is the main way that we measure how many goods and services we're producing within the United States. Remember, they don't care if it's made by American citizens or American companies or foreign citizens. They just want to know within the borders of the US, how much stuff are we producing? We also talked about the unemployment rate, which is a percentage of people who currently do not have a job but are actively looking for one. Remember, the unemployment rate does not include people who don't have a job, who don't want one, like retirees or stay-at-home parents. And we also talked about the inflation rate. This is the rate at which general level of consumer prices goes up. Deflation would be when those prices go down, and the inflation rate is a percentage.